Okay, wow. This is Carson Thinks Ball, my second channel where I give unscripted reactions to games I just watched. We just watched the Indiana Pacers beat the Milwaukee Bucks in an overtime game to end this series. The Pacers finished this series 4-1, and this game was probably the best game of the playoffs so far. To start this game, it's classic Bucks fashion. It's pretty much all Giannis. He finished this game with 30 points, 20 rebounds, and 13 assists, as well as 4 stocks. AJ Green put on a really good performance. He started this game really hot. He had about, I think, 4 threes in the first half. He was going off. Gary Trent Jr., not the game you want from him after the showing he had before, or at least that's what it looked like, because he started this game 0 for 6 from 3, and then I think at one point he was 0 for 7 from 3, but he still played pretty fine until it got to that overtime, which we're going to talk about in a second. My biggest takeaway from this game is Doc Rivers finally did something as a coach. He kept running the same lineups all series, and it was clear it wasn't working. He was playing Brook Lopez way more than he should have been playing Brook Lopez, and it was so obvious Brook Lopez did not belong on this court. But finally, Bobby Portis started this game. Kyle Kuzma didn't start this game, which was pretty huge. We saw a lot more AJ Green. Of course, he played 46 minutes in this game. Kyle Kuzma played 13. So, Kyle Kuzma being your big trade deadline acquisition, you want him to play a little more, but I respect Doc Rivers for finally making a move. He's finally doing something. And it was clear this was the right choice because early on in this game, the Bucks had a commanding lead. It was all Bucks pretty much. At one point, they had a 20-point lead. That was at the beginning of the second quarter. Indiana had a lot of trouble just getting stuff going. They missed a lot of open shots, especially at the beginning, and the Milwaukee defense was suffocating. It wasn't even just Indiana missing all their open shots. They weren't getting open shots for the most part. Andrew Nembhard didn't play super awesome. Miles Turner missed some shots he shouldn't have missed. Tyrese Halliburton, outside of that overtime, which we're going to get to in a second, played, I think, great basketball. Tyrese Halliburton, I guess he won the most overrated player poll, according to NBA players, which I think is the stupidest thing. There was somebody on Twitter who I don't remember who said it. It was, when you watch Indiana games, or when you watch Pacers games, you don't really notice Tyrese Halliburton, but when you watch Tyrese Halliburton, you notice him more than anyone, which sounds like, yeah, no, like, duh. Of course you notice him more than anyone if you're watching him specifically. But the impact Tyrese Halliburton has on a basketball game goes so far beyond just the box score. Everybody's seen those, like, in a 5-game span, he gets, 40 assists and 1 turnover, blah, blah, blah. But his defense was incredible today. He had 3 blocks and 3 steals, which is usually not a Tyrese Halliburton type of thing. He's always making the right decision, it seems, except at the end of the game. Well, almost. But Tyrese Halliburton, whenever the ball's in his hands, you're confident that something good is going to happen. You're confident he's not going to turn the ball over. You're confident he's not going to take a dumb shot. TJ McConnell, great off the bench. I kind of wish he got more run at the end of the game, especially when things looked a little dire. He played super awesome. He played super aggressive. It was just super awesome to see out of him. Pascal Siakam, this felt like Pascal Siakam's first bad game of the year, which is kind of dumb to say because he had 12 points in the last game. Pascal Siakam has been so consistent all year long, and this was just completely not the best game from him. He was 5 for 12. He had 10 points, 4 rebounds in 41 minutes, and he ended this game with 5 fouls, but it's not like he was in foul trouble for really any of this game. It was just not a good Pascal Siakam game. Giannis played incredible defense on him. Giannis, who, by the way, everybody knows is an awesome defender, stepped up in this game. It was clear he knew what was on the line. He didn't want to go home, and he really dominated on the defensive end. But as the game went on, it got close again. After the first half ended, it became kind of a tied game for most of it. And then Giannis had a chance to win the game, and he pulled up for a midi, and he missed it. Giannis played incredible. He had 7 turnovers. They were really hounding Giannis. They were fouling him a lot, but that's what comes with when you're the most dominant paint presence in the game right now. I think he played as well as he could. And I don't really like the shot Giannis took to try to win the game, at the end of the fourth quarter. A double team, turn around. I mean, obviously he's going to get double teamed, but you're the most dominant paint presence in the game. You're the best when you have momentum and you're running at the rim. Obviously there's the threat of, someone drawing a charge and then you foul out of this basketball game. Giannis was in foul trouble for most of this game, and then in overtime they wouldn't have Giannis. But a pull-up midi, and I know Giannis is a better mid-range shooter this year. That's his thing now, but that's not the reason you had a good game. Don't rely on that. But that's the shot he took, and it didn't go in, so then it went to overtime. And this was one of the craziest overtime games I've ever seen. Gary Trent Jr., who had a fine game before this, but his threes weren't falling. He hit 4 threes in this overtime, right after another. And Tyrese Halliburton, I'd argue one of the smartest players in the league, just kept chucking threes, and they weren't terrible looks, don't get me wrong. He beat Brook Lopez off the dribble, step back, now he's open, but he kept missing. It was 3 or 4 3-points in a row, and Gary Trent Jr. just kept hitting his over and over and over again. But then the Pacers defense at the end of that game, Andrew Nembhard had a good block. There's a steal, I don't remember who. stole the ball in an inbounds pass, and then they got another shot. Naismith had to chuck up a three, and that went in. And Aaron Naismith, by the way, had a great overtime. He played really well. I think he had like 5 points that overtime. But he set up Hallie really nicely because Andrew Nemhard got like a 33-footer three when you kind of thought the game was over. It kind of looked like the Bucks were kind of like, all right, we won this game. He hits the three, and now it's like, okay, it's 118 to 114. Now the game's kind of a thing again. And then Gary Trent Jr. turns the ball over with a bad pass. That's the inbound pass that they stole. Halliburton hits a and one layup, which, finally he's not relying on that three that he was chucking up all over time, and now he's getting to the paint, which worked really well for him this game, by the way. And then, oh my gosh, I felt bad watching this. They passed the ball to Gary Trent Jr. in the corner because now they finally got a successful inbound pass. And now Gary Trent Jr., who's relatively like not guarded in the corner, like the left wing, like no one's near him, no one's pressuring him, no one's giving him ball pressure. He has the ball in between his hands and he's just like standing there. The ball goes in between his legs out of bound. And then when the Pacers are ready to inbound the ball, when the Bucks have been inbounding the ball, the Pacers are hounding them. They're not even letting them get opportunities, and Doc Rivers has to call timeouts. When it's the Pacers' turn to inbound the ball, no one on the Bucks is like hounding them and making it difficult for them to get the ball in. And obviously the Pacers are the younger, more athletic, more fast-paced team. But it's like the Bucks just didn't show any urgency. And then, of course, Halliburton, game winner, driving layup. And, there's some miscommunication. We got to hit a half-court shot. And then Gary Trent Jr. misses the half-court shot, which Gary Trent Jr., he had 4 threes in this overtime. And then he, sold the game 2 or 3 times. And it was such a nightmare for the Bucks because, it looked like this game was it was yours. You're going to come back from this 3-1 deficit and then you throw it away the last minute. They did that multiple times in this game. Now we're at the point of the Bucks off season where is Giannis going to stay on this team? Is Damian Lillard going to stay on this team? And all the signs are pointing towards, no, Giannis is gone. Giannis is not going to be a Milwaukee Buck next year. And now that begs the question, where's he going? The Magic, the Hawks, the Nets, the Heat. There's so many, the Rockets, he could go anywhere, honestly, or he stays. But Giannis has made it clear, not that he wants to leave Milwaukee, but I think someone asked him an interview question. It was like, are you willing to stay in Milwaukee, if you're not winning or blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I just want to go where it takes to win, whether that's Milwaukee. And it's like, oh, well, he's not denying the fact that he might want to leave Milwaukee. So now I think Giannis is going to leave because this team is not building around him well. Gary Trent Jr. has had to pick up a lot of load in the postseason, and that's not how you want to do that. Kevin Porter Jr. was a weird acquisition. Kyle Kuzma, terrible. You traded like a franchise legend in Chris Middleton for. The Bucks are in shambles. It's time to blow up. The Pacers face the Cavs in the next round, and you can tell in the back, Cleveland. I'm a Cavs fan. I think we take this series, but I'm a little nervous. I was also nervous for the Heat series. I have a little anti-bias against any team, so I'm trying to keep positive and remain optimistic. But the Pacers are scary, man. When they get hot, they get hot. They run that ball. They move quick. So we'll see how we compete with that. On my main channel, I'm probably going to make a breakdown about this whole Giannis thing and where's he going. So you should subscribe to Carson Knows Ball, and you should also subscribe to Carson Thinks Ball for more reactions like this. All right.